like us to move. So, my name is Rachel Sinfield, and it's my job to welcome you to the Fitzwilliam Museum on behalf of all my colleagues. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. We're actually sitting in Gallery 3 of the Fitzwilliam Museum, which is part of our founder's building, which is the Greek temple-like building that you can see from the road. The founder is Viscount Fitzwilliam, and he can be found, his portrait is just on the other side of this bulkhead to my left. And we are going to be celebrating the bicentenary of his death next year in 2016. And we'll be celebrating that because on his death he made a bequest of his collection to the University of Cambridge and £100,000 to build the building in which the collection is housed. And one of the lesser known parts, or less visible parts of his collection, was in fact his extensive music collection. And that's part of why we're here today. Because, again, around the corner, in the floor cabinet on the left, we have on display the Fitzwilliam Virginal Book. And the Fitzwilliam Virginal Book is a collection of works by about 30 composers, 300 pieces, and it's thought to be one of the most important, well, if not the most important, surviving manuscript of English music from 1620 to about 1625. Now, the connection here is that the book itself is it's a thing of beauty in itself. The binding is thought to be the original, and the hand which has transcribed it is a very beautiful hand, and it's a very aesthetic. It's an aesthetic pleasure to look at the music as it is written. Now, it's thought to have been transcribed by Francis Tregian, who is, of course, the hero of our book, which is being launched today. So it's a particular pleasure to be able to welcome you to this afternoon of readings and music and discussion centred around Francis Tregian. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Rachel, and the whole Fitzwilliam Museum for hosting this event. It's a real privilege and delight to be able to have this book launched in a place that is so wonderful in itself and so appropriate to the book. And there are some things which make it even more appropriate, perhaps, because of the author of the book, Anne Cuneo, was Swiss, and apparently the Fitzwilliam Virginal Book, in fact, was a book that was written using the best Swiss paper available. So things in some way have come full circle in bringing a Swiss author's interpretation of the story of the creation of the book back to the museum. And we hope you'll enjoy what we have today, which is something, a really lovely chance to hear one of the foremost performers of early music, Patrick Ayrton, performing almost exclusively pieces from the Fitzwilliam Virginal Book, and Roland and Louise, who have translated the book, reading short extracts and then talking more about the book. So just to introduce you briefly then, I'm Stefan Tobler from the publishing house And Other Stories, and Louise is a literary translator who works from French into English. She's translated a number of important French writers, including Jean Roland and Gabrielle Woodcock, and she lives in France. And Roland has also published numerous translations from French. He's an active member of the Translators Association Committee, and he lives, after having lived for a long time in France, lives in London again. Patrick, as I said, is a brilliant performer. He's also a conductor. He's given master classes at many universities, including the Tchaikovsky Conservatory in Moscow. He has received invitations to conduct orchestras of repute, such as the Orchestra of the Auvergne, the Chamber Academy of Potsdam. There are so many, I won't name them all. The Chamber Orchestra of Munich, many different ones. And one reason we're particularly excited that he is here is that he helped Anne Cuneo, the author, with the research for the book. He is, in fact, also the central figure in a documentary about Tregian, who is the compiler of the Fitzwilliam Virginal Book and the subject of the novel that you're going to hear from. So we're incredibly lucky to have all three of them, as well, to the Fitzwilliam for hosting, the Swiss Embassy for supporting Patrick's trip from France, and also incredibly thankful to you, Louise and Roland, for arranging so much of this, including finding us the harpsichord. Unfortunately, there is obviously one person who isn't here, Anne Cuneo, and that is really an incredibly sad thing, because one reason that this book has two translators is because Anne was battling with cancer, and it was really her lifelong dream to see her books in English. She was always an ardent Anglophile, and her books, although they had many, many readers in the French-speaking and German-speaking world, they hadn't yet been translated into English. And she was incredibly keen to see this book of hers appear, and she knew that time was limited. Unfortunately, she died earlier this year, in February. So it's bittersweet to be launching it here without her, but in many ways, Patrick, who has collaborated with her for so long, is her representative, we could say, and so it's really wonderful to have you here. And I think, without further ado, it would be great to start. Thank you.